My daughter's teacher encouraged kids to call her broken robot because of her stutter. When I tried to hold him accountable, he laughed and said, if she can't handle a little teasing, life's going to eat her alive. I didn't say a word. That was 2 months ago. I stayed silent. That was 8 weeks ago. This morning, he had to be escorted out of his office. I still remember the day my daughter came home from elementary school crying her eyes out. Her little face was completely red and swollen, and it absolutely broke my heart. I asked her what was going on, keeping my voice steady and calm. This continued for a few minutes. My daughter has a speech impediment, so this was nothing new, but still, her stuttering was lasting longer than usual, which made me immediately suspicious. After 10 minutes, she finally said enough for me to make out what was going on. Well, kinda. I knew it was something about her teacher, and the class laughing at her. It was enough for me to be filled with rage. In front of her, I kept my cool and used my usual dad trick. I grabbed a piece of paper, scribbled a world's coolest daughter certificate onto it, and handed it to her. Through her tears, she started giggling, and finished her evening with a Bath and Body Works bath bomb. The next day, after I dropped her off, I waited in the car park. After 20 minutes had passed, I sneaked into her elementary school and stood outside the door of her classroom. I honestly had no idea what I was doing or what exactly I was looking for. I just knew I needed to do something. And after just a few minutes, I got my answer. The teacher asked the class a question, and my daughter's hand shot right up. A feeling of pride filled my veins, but that was soon replaced with rage. 300 and... She struggled to get the words out, but it was clear she knew the answer. But instead of encouraging her, the teacher chuckled. Suddenly, the entire room broke into laughter. Hey, Zoe, maybe you should use your words, someone heckled. She sounds like a broken robot, someone else said tauntingly. It took everything in me not to burst right through the door and start throwing hands, because I knew that would embarrass her. So instead, I continued observing. Tears started streaming down my daughter's face, and the teacher said, okay, let's move on, with a massive smirk plastered on his face. That's when my cover was blown, because my daughter ran out to try and make a beeline towards the bathroom. But I stopped her, and she ran into my arms. I held her so tight she could barely breathe, and I immediately felt her little shoulders loosen up. I put her down, and she tightly held my hand as we marched to the principal's office. When we walked in, he looked confused, and I could immediately tell that he wasn't aware of what was going on. So I laid it out for him. A member of your staff has been encouraging bullying towards my daughter. My tone was cold, straight to the point. I expected to notice some sort of urgency or shock in his face, but instead, he just sighed. What is it for? Her speech impediment, I responded. Well, she should probably get it fixed then. My hand that wasn't holding my daughter's tightened so hard my knuckles turned completely white. I was about to say something, but that's when I noticed the school calendar on his desk. There was an event scheduled for Friday that week, the school talent show. That fact was enough for me to walk away from the situation because I began to hatch a plan. You see, I worked as a general at a military base. None of the parents or teachers knew this because it usually garners a lot of attention, something I wanted to avoid. But I was about to shove it down their throats. I let my daughter stay home from school until the day came. Fast forward to Friday. My daughter was due to perform a poem, and she was begging me to let her pull out. No, sweetie pie, you gotta show them who's boss, I'd tell her. I knew she was going to get bullied, laughed at, made fun of, but I wanted that. In fact, the more they teased her, the happier I'd be. So when she had just finished her first sentence and someone yelled, "Hey, are you loading or something?" I smiled, because that's when 6 military trucks pulled up outside and soldiers began to fill the auditorium. Everyone sat there frozen, not knowing if this was organized by someone else. As Zoe locked eyes with me, I told her to continue. She kept stuttering, but this time the room was silent, except for her teacher who couldn't help but burst into laughter. In response, one of my soldiers marched straight towards him and stared him down until he felt too stupid to say anything else. As soon as my daughter finished, they all filed out and left. Everyone's heads turned to look at each other, and the auditorium was flooded with muffled confusion. This was then followed by a slow, controlled round of applause. Some people were even cheering. Meanwhile, the teacher looked like he was about to tear the room apart with anger. This made me even more amused, and a sense of joy filled my stomach. First, I thought the story had ended, but really, it was just beginning, because it turns out that teacher, Mr. Evans, had an ace up his sleeve, one that threatened to ruin me and my daughter's lives forever. People were looking at each other, at the doors, at Zoe, trying to figure out what had just happened. Principal Wilson was on his feet now, looking around wildly. Mr. Evans just sat there, his face a mixture of confusion and embarrassment. Zoe practically ran off the stage and back to me. I wrapped her in a huge hug, lifting her off her feet. "You did it, kiddo! You were amazing!" She was beaming. "Did you see their faces? Nobody laughed at me. Nobody will ever laugh at you again," I promised. We stayed for the rest of the show, though I barely paid attention to the other acts. I was too busy watching Mr. Evans, who kept glancing back at us with barely concealed anger. Good. Let him be angry. As long as he never messed with my daughter again, I didn't care. After the show, several parents came up to congratulate Zoe on her poem. A few gave me curious looks, clearly wondering about the military presence, but no one directly asked. Small-town politeness, I guess. As we were leaving, Principal Wilson intercepted us at the door. He had this fake smile plastered on his face. "Mr. Mitchell, could I have a word with you in my office on Monday morning?" "Sure thing," I said cheerfully. looking forward to it. The weekend was great. Zoe was on cloud nine, talking nonstop about how cool it was when all the officers came in and how nobody laughed at her. We celebrated with ice cream and a movie marathon. For the first time in weeks, she seemed excited about going back to school on Monday. I dropped her off Monday morning, then parked and headed to my meeting with Principal Wilson. I wasn't worried. What were they going to do? Complain that I stopped my daughter from being bullied? When I walked into his office, I was surprised to see Mr. Evans sitting there too. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Principal Wilson gestured for me to sit down. Mr. Mitchell, what happened at the talent show on Friday was unprecedented. Was it? I asked innocently. You brought military personnel into a school event without authorization. That's a serious security breach. I shrugged. I didn't see any signs saying no military allowed. They're all tax-paying citizens who wanted to support the arts in our schools. What's the problem? Principal Wilson's face reddened. The problem is that it was clearly an intimidation tactic. Intimidation? I don't know what you mean. I just invited some colleagues to watch my daughter perform. Unlike some people in this room, they know how to behave respectfully when a child is speaking. Mr. Evans finally looked up, his face twisted with anger. This is ridiculous. He threatened me. Not a single person spoke to you, I pointed out. If you felt threatened by someone simply standing near you, maybe that's your conscience talking. Principal Wilson sighed heavily. Mr. Mitchell, we can't have parents bringing in military displays every time they have an issue with the school. And we can't have teachers allowing students to bully a child with a disability, I countered. Which, by the way, is a violation of about a dozen education laws and policies. That shut them up. Principal Wilson cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mr. Evans has assured me he never encouraged any bullying. I saw it with my own eyes. So did 8 United States military officers, all of whom would be happy to provide statements if needed. I'm sure the school board, the local news, and the Americans with Disabilities Act Enforcement Office would find their accounts very interesting. The threat hung in the air. Principal Wilson and Mr. Evans exchanged glances. What exactly do you want, Mr. Mitchell? Principal Wilson finally asked. I want my daughter to be treated with respect. I want Mr. Evans to apologize to her in front of the class. And I want a clear anti-bullying policy that specifically addresses disabilities, including speech impediments, with real consequences for teachers who violate it. Principal Wilson nodded slowly. I think we can arrange that. Mr. Evans started to protest, but Principal Wilson cut him off with a look. I stood up, considering the meeting over. Great. I'll expect that apology today, and I'll be checking in with Zoe to make sure there are no further incidents. I walked out feeling pretty good about myself. I'd stood up for my daughter and made sure those jerks knew they couldn't mess with her anymore. Problem solved, right? Man, was I wrong. The next couple of weeks seemed to go fine. Zoe reported that Mr. Evans had apologized to her in front of everyone, though she said he didn't sound like he meant it. Still, the bullying stopped, and she was back to her happy self, excited about school and her friends. Then one afternoon, I got a call from the base. My commanding officer wanted to see me immediately. That was weird. We just had our regular meeting that morning. When I arrived at his office, Colonel Barnes was sitting behind his desk, looking more serious than usual. He gestured for me to sit down. Mitchell, we need to talk about what happened at your daughter's school. My stomach dropped. Sir? I received a call from the superintendent of schools. Apparently, you used military resources for a personal matter. Sir, I just asked a few friends to attend a school function with me. They were all off duty. Colonel Barnes raised an eyebrow. In uniform? That's not how it was described to me. I shifted uncomfortably. It may have been a bit theatrical, sir, but I was dealing with a situation where my daughter was being bullied because of her disability, and the school administration wasn't taking it seriously. He nodded slowly. I understand the instinct to protect your child, Mitchell, but you know as well as I do that using your position this way is inappropriate. The military isn't your personal enforcement squad. Yes, sir, I said, feeling a mix of embarrassment and defiance. I still didn't think I'd done anything wrong, but I could see how it looked bad. This is a serious violation of military protocol, he continued. However, given your record and the circumstances, I'm going to let it go with a formal reprimand. This time, don't let it happen again. Thank you, sir. It won't. I left his office feeling relieved but also uneasy. I hadn't fully considered that there might be professional consequences for what I'd done, but at least it was over now, or so I thought. The next morning, I dropped Zoe off at school as usual. She seemed fine, excited even, chattering about a science project they were starting that day. I headed to work, put the whole thing out of my mind, and focused on my actual job. Around lunchtime, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mr. Mitchell? This is Sarah from Westlake Elementary. There's been an incident involving Zoe. We need you to come to the school right away. My heart started racing. Is she hurt? What happened? She's not injured, but it would be better to discuss this in person. How soon can you get here? 20 minutes, I said, already grabbing my keys. I made it in 15, breaking probably a dozen traffic laws on the way. When I rushed into the school office, the secretary directed me to a conference room down the hall. Inside, I found Zoe sitting alone at a big table, looking small and scared. When she saw me, she burst into tears. I immediately went to her and pulled her into a hug. What's going on, sweetie? Are you okay? Before she could answer, the door opened, and Principal Wilson walked in, followed by a woman in a suit I didn't recognize. Mr. Mitchell, thank you for coming so quickly, Principal Wilson said. This is Ms. Taylor from Child Protective Services. My blood ran cold. CPS? What the hell is this about? Ms. Taylor stepped forward, her expression professionally neutral. Mr. Mitchell, we received a report expressing concern about possible intimidation tactics being used in front of your daughter. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What? That's ridiculous. Who would say something like that? Ms. Taylor glanced at Principal Wilson, who suddenly seemed very interested in his shoes. The report was anonymous. she said, though her tone made it clear she knew exactly who had made it. But it detailed an incident where you allegedly used military personnel to create an intimidating environment at a school function. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was protecting her. The school wasn't doing anything about the bullying, so I took matters into my own hands by potentially making an entire auditorium of children uncomfortable with an unexpected military presence, Ms. Taylor asked, and using your daughter as the centerpiece of this display? Put like that, it did sound bad, but that wasn't how it happened at all. I didn't intimidate anyone, I insisted. I just wanted to make sure no one laughed at her while she was performing. Ms. Taylor made some notes on her tablet. Mr. Mitchell, I understand you're a single father. Is that correct? Yes. Her mother left when she was 3. And you work full-time as a military officer? A high-stress position that likely involves long hours? I saw where this was going and felt sick. I make it work. Zoe is well taken care of. Ms. Taylor turned to Zoe, her voice softening. Zoe, can you tell me how you felt when all those officers came into your school? Zoe looked at me, then back at Ms. Taylor. I was scared at first, but then I felt safe. Nobody laughed at me. Did you know your dad was going to bring military officers to your school? Zoe shook her head. Not exactly. He just said to trust him. Ms. Taylor made another note. And how did you feel when the other kids and your teacher laughed at you before? Zoe's eyes welled up again. Really bad. Like I wanted to disappear. Ms. Taylor nodded sympathetically, then turned back to me. Mr. Mitchell, I'm not making any determinations today. This is just a preliminary interview, but I do need to conduct a home visit and speak with you privately as well. Fine, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Whatever it takes to clear this up. She scheduled the home visit for the next day, then left. Principal Wilson mumbled something about Zoe being excused for the rest of the day and practically ran out of the room. I was furious. This was clearly retaliation from Mr. Evans or Principal Wilson or both. They couldn't handle being called out for their behavior, so they were trying to paint me as an unfit parent, and they were using Zoe as a pawn in their game. On the drive home, Zoe was unusually quiet. Finally, she asked in a small voice, Dad, am I going to have to go away, like Mom did? My heart broke. No, sweetie, absolutely not. This is just a misunderstanding. That lady is just doing her job, making sure you're okay. And you are okay, right? She nodded. I'm okay when I'm with you. That night, after Zoe went to bed, I sat at my kitchen table trying to figure out what to do. The CPS visit didn't worry me too much. Our house was clean, there was food in the fridge, and Zoe was obviously well cared for. But the fact that someone had made this report at all was deeply concerning. How far were they willing to go to get back at me? I decided to call my friend Linda, who worked as a family lawyer. I explained the situation, trying not to sound as panicked as I felt. First of all, take a deep breath, she said after I finished. CPS gets false reports all the time. They're trained to recognize when someone's using the system for retaliation. But what if they don't? What if they decide I'm some kind of military nutjob who's endangering his kid? Linda sighed. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. The military stunt wasn't your smartest move, but one bad decision doesn't make you an unfit parent. Just be honest with the caseworker, show them your normal home life, and emphasize that everything you did was to protect Zoe from ongoing bullying that the school refused to address. I followed her advice. When Ms. Taylor came for the home visit the next day, I was calm and cooperative. I showed her around our house, including Zoe's room with its mountains of stuffed animals and books. I explained our routines, how I'd arranged my schedule to be home when Zoe got back from school most days, and the support network we had in place for when I couldn't be. Ms. Taylor seemed satisfied with what she saw, but she still had questions about the talent show incident. I understand wanting to protect your child, she said, as we sat at the kitchen table, but bringing military personnel into an elementary school without proper authorization shows concerning judgment. I admit it was unorthodox, I said, but I had tried the conventional routes. I spoke to the teacher, I went to the principal. They both dismissed me. What was I supposed to do? Just let my daughter continue to be humiliated? Ms. Taylor made some notes. There are other options. The school district has an ombudsman. There are disability advocacy groups that could have intervened. She was right, and I felt a twinge of shame. In my anger, I'd gone straight to the nuclear option without considering alternatives. I made a mistake, I admitted. I was angry and wanted to make a point, but everything I did was to protect Zoe, not to harm her or anyone else. Ms. Taylor nodded. I believe you, Mr. Mitchell, and from what I've seen today, Zoe appears to be thriving in your care, despite the challenges of single parenthood. I'll be recommending that this case be closed without further action. Relief washed over me. Thank you. After she left, I sat on the couch feeling drained. The CPS investigation might be over, but I still had a problem. Someone at that school had it out for me and Zoe, and I had a pretty good idea who it was. The next day, I decided to go straight to the source. After dropping Zoe off, I marched to Mr. Evans's classroom. School had just started, so the kids were all inside. I knocked on his door. He opened it, and his face immediately hardened when he saw me. Mr. Mitchell, class has started. If you want to speak with me, you'll need to make an appointment. This will only take a minute, I said, keeping my voice low. I know it was you who called CPS. His expression didn't change, but a slight twitch in his jaw told me I was right. I don't know what you're talking about, he said stiffly. Listen carefully, I said, stepping closer. I made a mistake with the talent show. I admit that. But if you ever try to use the system to separate me from my daughter again, we will have a serious problem. And that's not a threat. It's a promise. Mr. Evans's eyes narrowed. Are you threatening me? Again? Because that worked out so well for you last time. I'm not threatening anything. I'm just letting you know that if you want to play hardball, I'm prepared to defend my daughter through proper channels. I've documented everything that's happened, and I'm ready to take it to the superintendent if necessary. I turned and walked away before he could respond. It wasn't my finest moment, and probably not the smartest move given recent events, but I needed him to know I wasn't backing down. As I headed to my car, I spotted Principal Wilson watching me from his office window. Great. Now I'd probably get accused of confronting a teacher on school grounds. That afternoon, when I picked Zoe up from school, she seemed quieter than usual. Something was off. "Everything okay, kiddo?" I asked as we drove home. She shrugged, looking out the window. "I guess, did something happen at school today?" She was quiet for so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. Finally, she said, "Mr. Evans made me stay in at recess to finish my math work, but I already finished it. He just said it wasn't good enough." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Did he say anything else to you?" She nodded, still not looking at me. "He said I should tell you to be careful, or things might get harder for me in class." I nearly drove off the road. This guy was now indirectly pressuring my 9-year-old daughter. This crossed a serious line. "Zoe, listen to me," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Mr. Evans is wrong to say that to you. You didn't do anything wrong and neither did I. I'm going to take care of this, okay?" She finally looked at me, her eyes worried. "How? Are you going to bring the officers again?" "No, sweetie. No more officers. I'm going to handle this the right way this time." When we got home, I immediately called Linda again. I explained what had happened, including my confrontation with Mr. Evans and what he'd said to Zoe. "That's inappropriate conduct toward a student," Linda said, her lawyer voice kicking in. "And using a child to send messages to a parent is completely unprofessional, possibly even grounds for disciplinary action. So what do? Document everything. Have Zoe write down exactly what happened and what was said, then take it straight to the superintendent, not the principal. Wilson's already shown he's not going to help you." I followed her advice. I helped Zoe write down what had happened, being careful not to put words in her mouth. Then I wrote my own account of everything that had happened since that first day I found her crying after school. The next morning, instead of going to work, I drove to the district office. I had to wait almost 2 hours, but finally got in to see Superintendent Reese, a stern-looking woman with salt and pepper hair. I laid out everything: the initial bullying, the school's failure to address it, my admittedly over-the-top response at the talent show, the CPS report, and now Mr. Evans's inappropriate behavior toward Zoe. Superintendent Reese listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and sighed. "Mr. Mitchell, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. What you've described is deeply concerning on multiple levels. So you'll do something about it? I'll need to conduct my own investigation, speak with all parties involved. But yes, if what you've told me is accurate, there will be consequences. Teacher-sanctioned bullying is unacceptable, as is retaliating against a student." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Finally, someone was taking this seriously. "What about Zoe?" I asked. "I don't want her in that man's classroom anymore." Superintendent Reese nodded. "I think we can arrange a transfer to Ms. Johnson's class. She's excellent with children who have special needs." I left the district office feeling cautiously optimistic. Maybe this nightmare was finally coming to an end. But as I was about to learn, Mr. Evans had one more card to play, and it was going to change everything. The next day, I got a call from Superintendent Reese, asking me to come back to her office. I figured she had updates on the investigation, so I rearranged my schedule at work and headed over. When I walked in, her expression was grim, which immediately set off alarm bells in my head. "Mr. Mitchell, please sit down," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "We have a situation." My stomach dropped. "What kind of situation?" She slid a folder across her desk. "Mr. Evans has filed a formal complaint against you. He's claiming you've been harassing him, and that the military display was actually an attempt to intimidate him specifically because of a personal vendetta." I opened the folder and started reading. The more I read, the angrier I got. This guy had completely twisted everything that happened. "This is BS," I said, tossing the folder back on her desk. "He's the one who's been harassing my daughter." Superintendent Reese held up her hand. "I understand you're upset, but there's more." She pulled out another document. "He's provided a recording from yesterday morning. You went to his classroom and made what could be interpreted as threats." Damn. I had completely forgotten about school security cameras. "I didn't threaten him. I just told him to stop messing with my family. The recording doesn't have audio, but he claims you said, and I quote, 'If you want to play hardball, I'm prepared to defend my daughter.' That could be construed as a threat." I ran my hand through my hair, frustrated. "Okay, I shouldn't have confronted him, but you have to understand, this guy called CPS on me and then intimidated my 9-year-old daughter. I'm taking those allegations very seriously," she assured me. "But Mr. Evans has also raised concerns about your judgment." "My what?" "He's suggesting that your military background combined with the stress of single parenthood has made you reactive. He's pointed to the talent show incident as evidence." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This snake was trying to paint me as some unstable military officer who might snap at any moment. It was such a cheap, stereotypical play that I almost laughed. Almost. "So what happens now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "The school board will need to review all the evidence. In the meantime, I've approved Zoe's transfer to Ms. Johnson's class, effective immediately." That was something, at least. "And Mr. Evans? He'll continue teaching while the investigation proceeds. That's standard protocol." I wanted to argue, but I knew it wouldn't help. "Fine. Is there anything else? Just try to keep your distance from Mr. Evans, for everyone's sake." I nodded and left, seething. This guy was playing dirty, and somehow I was the one being treated like the problem. On my way out of the building, my phone rang. It was Linda. "How'd it go with the superintendent?" she asked. I filled her in on everything, including Morgan's counter-complaint and the security footage. That sneaky bastard, Linda said when I finished. He's trying to flip the script on you, and it's working, I said, getting into my car. What do I do now? You need witnesses, she said immediately. Other parents, other kids who've seen Morgan bullying students or behaving inappropriately. You can't be the only one who's noticed. She was right. I'd been so focused on protecting Zoe that I hadn't thought about building a broader case against Morgan. How do I find them? It's not like I can just walk up to random parents and ask if their kids are being bullied too. PTA meeting, Linda said. There's one tomorrow night. Go, mingle, drop some hints about concerns with certain teaching methods. See who bites. The PTA meeting was being held in the school cafeteria. I felt awkward as hell walking in there. Most of the parents seemed to know each other already, chatting in little groups while setting up folding chairs. I spotted a few dads and gravitated toward them, figuring that was my best shot at breaking the ice. First time? One of them asked as I approached. He was a tall guy with a friendly face. That obvious, huh? He laughed. I'm Michael. My daughter's in 4th grade. Jason, I said, shaking his hand. My daughter Zoe's in 3rd. Oh, Zoe. My daughter Casey mentioned her. She just switched to Ms. Johnson's class, right? I nodded, surprised. Yeah, just yesterday actually. Casey was pretty excited about it. Said Zoe seems nice but was having a rough time in Mr. Evans's class. This was my opening. Yeah, we had some issues with his teaching methods. Michael's expression darkened slightly. Join the club. That guy's a piece of work. My heart rate picked up. What do you mean? He glanced around, then lowered his voice. Let's just say Casey was in his class last year, and it wasn't a great experience. The guy plays favorites like you wouldn't believe, and if your kid doesn't fit his mold of a good student, they're in for a rough year. Did he ever? I hesitated, not wanting to lead him. Did Casey ever have problems with him specifically? Michael sighed. She has dyslexia. Morgan made her read out loud constantly, even though her IEP specifically said not to put her on the spot like that. When we complained, he said she needed to get over it, and that we were coddling her. Bingo. Did you report him? To Wilson? Yeah, fat lot of good that did. They're fishing buddies or something. Wilson just said Morgan had high expectations and was pushing students to excel. By the end of the meeting, I talked to 3 more parents with similar stories. One mom's son had ADH and was constantly being punished for not sitting still. Another parent's daughter was made to stand in the corner for asking too many questions. And one dad told me Morgan had made fun of his son's accent. The family had moved from the Philippines the year before. None of them had gone further than complaining to Principal Wilson, who had brushed them all off, and none of them knew about the others' complaints. They'd all felt isolated, like they were the only ones having issues. I got their contact information, and, with their permission, passed it along to Superintendent Reese the next day. She seemed genuinely surprised by the pattern that was emerging. This is concerning, she admitted. I'll need to interview all of these parents. There's more, I said. I think Principal Wilson has been covering for Morgan. All of these parents complained to him, and he dismissed them. Superintendent Reese's expression hardened. That's a serious allegation, Mr. Mitchell. It's the truth, and I bet if you dig deeper, you'll find even more cases. She promised to look into it thoroughly. I left feeling better than I had in weeks. Finally, things were moving in the right direction, or so I thought. 2 days later, Zoe came home from school looking upset again. What's wrong, sweetie? I asked, immediately concerned. Everyone's talking about me, she said quietly. They're saying you're going to get Mr. Evans fired, and it's all my fault. My blood boiled. Who's saying that? Just kids. They said their parents were talking about it. I pulled her into a hug. None of this is your fault, Zoe. Mr. Evans is responsible for his own actions. But what if he does get fired? Everyone will hate me. They won't hate you. And even if some kids are mean about it, that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. She didn't look convinced, but she nodded anyway. I tried to distract her with pizza and a movie night, but I could tell she was still worried. The next morning, I got another call from Superintendent Reese. Mr. Mitchell, I need you to come to my office immediately. There's been a development. Her tone made my stomach clench. What kind of development? It's better if we discuss it in person. When I arrived, she wasn't alone. There was a man in a suit I didn't recognize sitting next to her desk. Mr. Mitchell, this is Mr. Thompson from the school board's legal department, she said, her expression grave. That couldn't be good. What's going on? Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. Mr. Mitchell, we've received some concerning information. Mr. Evans has provided us with emails that appear to show you discussing plans to, quote, destroy his career with several other parents. What? I was genuinely confused. I never sent any emails like that. He slid printouts across the desk. They looked like emails from my personal account to the parents I'd met at the PTA meeting, discussing ways to take Morgan down and make him pay. There was even one suggesting we plant evidence of misconduct. These are fake, I said immediately. I never wrote any of this. They came from your email address, Mr. Thompson pointed out. Then someone hacked my account or spoofed it or something. I would never write this crap. Superintendent Reese looked troubled. Mr. Mitchell, if these emails are authentic, they suggest a coordinated campaign to falsely accuse a teacher of misconduct. That would be grounds for legal action against you. They're not authentic, I insisted. Look, I just met these parents a few days ago. We exchanged contact info so they could share their experiences with Morgan. That's it. No conspiracy, no plotting. Mr. Thompson made a note. We'll need to verify the authenticity of these emails with our IT department. In the meantime, we're putting the investigation into Mr. Evans on hold. I left the meeting feeling like I was in some bizarre alternate reality. Morgan was framing me for framing him. It was so ridiculous it would be funny if my daughter's well-being wasn't at stake. I immediately called Linda and explained the situation. "This is getting out of hand," she said. "We need to go on the offensive. If he's willing to forge emails, who knows what else he's capable of? What do you suggest? We need to find out who this guy really is. Something's not right here. Normal teachers don't go to these lengths over a simple complaint." She had a point. Morgan's reaction seemed extreme, even for someone worried about losing their job. I spent that night doing some digging online. I started with basic searches of his name, but didn't find much beyond the school website and some old social media accounts that hadn't been updated in years. Then I had an idea. I called Rodriguez, my friend from the base. "Hey, I need a favor," I said when he answered. "Can you recommend someone who could do a background check on someone for me? It's personal, not official." There was a pause. "I know a private investigator who's reliable and discreet. Former military intelligence. I'll send you his contact info." 2 days later, the investigator called me with his findings. "Mr. Mitchell, you're going to want to see this." He came by my house that evening with a folder of documents. "Your Mr. Evans has an interesting history. His real name is Charles Morgan. He didn't change it, but he did leave his previous school district under questionable circumstances." "What kind of circumstances?" I asked, taking the folder. "At his previous school, he was accused of discriminatory behavior toward students with disabilities. Nothing was ever proven conclusively, but there were multiple complaints. The school district let him resign quietly rather than pursuing termination." I flipped through the documents, my anger growing with each page. "So he's done this before. Looks like it. And there's more. He was married to a woman named Karen who filed for divorce around the same time. In her petition, she mentioned emotional abuse and concerning behavior toward vulnerable students." "Jesus," I muttered. "Can we use this? The divorce records are public. The complaints from the previous school might be harder to access officially, but I included contact info for the former principal there. Might be worth a call." I thanked the investigator and immediately called Linda to update her. She was ecstatic. "This changes everything," she said. "If we can prove he has a pattern of targeting vulnerable students, the current complaints become much more credible." The next day, I called the former principal, a woman named Susan Miller, who was now retired. When I explained the situation, she was initially hesitant to talk. "We had a confidentiality agreement as part of his resignation," she said carefully. "I understand," I replied, "but my daughter has a speech impediment, and Morgan has been encouraging other students to mock her. She's 9 years old." There was a long pause. "That sounds familiar," she finally said. "Look, I can't officially comment on personnel matters, but hypothetically, if a teacher had shown a pattern of targeting students with disabilities, especially speech issues, and if that teacher had been allowed to resign rather than face an investigation, well, that might be something a current school district would want to know about." It wasn't a smoking gun, but it was enough to take back to Superintendent Reese. I compiled everything I had, the documents from the investigator, notes from my conversation with the former principal, and statements from the parents I'd met at the PTA meeting. When I presented it all to her, Superintendent Reese looked genuinely shocked. "This is disturbing," she said, flipping through the file. "If even half of this is accurate, Mr. Evans should never have been hired here. And the emails he claimed I sent? Our IT department already determined they were forgeries. The headers show they were created using a spoofing service." I felt a wave of relief. "So what happens now?" "Mr. Evans will be placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation, and Principal Wilson will have some serious questions to answer about his hiring practices and handling of complaints." 2 weeks later, the school board held a special meeting. Morgan was terminated for unprofessional conduct and falsification of evidence. Principal Wilson was reprimanded and put on probation for failing to properly investigate multiple complaints. When I told Zoe that Mr. Evans wouldn't be her teacher anymore, or anyone's teacher, she seemed relieved, but also worried. "What if the kids still blame me?" she asked. "They won't," I assured her. "The school is going to explain that Mr. Evans did some very wrong things that had nothing to do with you." And surprisingly, that's exactly what happened. The new interim principal, a kind woman named Mrs. Dakota, no relation to my lawyer friend, held an assembly explaining that Mr. Evans had broken important rules and that bullying of any kind wouldn't be tolerated. Zoe thrived in Ms. Johnson's class. Her stutter didn't magically disappear, but she gained confidence in speaking up, knowing she wouldn't be mocked for it. The school implemented a new anti-bullying program that specifically addressed disabilities, and teachers received training on how to handle speech impediments and other learning differences. As for me, I learned a valuable lesson about fighting battles the right way. The military display at the talent show had been satisfying in the moment, but it almost backfired spectacularly. In the end, what worked was gathering evidence, building alliances with other parents, and working through proper channels. A few months later, Zoe came home from school with a certificate, a real one, not one of my makeshift dad creations. It was for Most Improved Public Speaker, from her class presentation on, what else? Butterflies. Ms. Johnson said I did the best job explaining metamorphosis, she told me proudly, and nobody laughed, even when I stuttered. I hung that certificate on our fridge, right next to my handwritten World's Coolest Daughter Award. Every time I look at them, I'm reminded that sometimes the best way to fight for your kid isn't with a show of force, but with persistence, evidence, and a refusal to back down when they're being wronged. Oh, and I never did tell my commanding officer about that second investigation into Morgan. Some things are better left unsaid, especially when they work out in the end.